This is an Avocado Media Network presentation.
The Art.Is.Tic. It's an honor to be here, my brother. Turn me up in the headphones a little bit. You know, there's an old saying. All that is necessary for the triumph of evil is that good men do nothing. Well, we done doing nothing. But may the light forever shine on everyone that glow before me. We used to be just dope, now it's whiskey soaked in glory.
Chapter 1. The boy is dangerous. They all sense it. Why can't you? My father must have known what he was doing by not buying me a computer game when I was in primary school. It would have ruined me. I have never had the personal restraint that it takes to own a computer game and manage to get my schoolwork done at the same time. In my adulthood, I still suffer with this affliction. The only difference is this time, if I slack, I don't eat. He tried his best, being my father, to steer me from this path. He should have seen, however, how he was further pushing me towards it by trying to rip me away from it. I am 30 years old starting a book with a chapter about computer games, Dad. Sorry. I am not sorry, however, for the series of events involving video games which led me to finding the perfect song to start my album. I am not sorry for meeting Chasha, my current girlfriend's brother-in-law-to-be, who liked video games as much as I do. I am not sorry he introduced me to Tom Clancy's The Division. I am not sorry I posted a video of me playing The Division on my Instagram account and got a response from Samuel Santulu, aka Greasy Beats, aka The Boy is Dangerous. They all sense it, why can't you? I am not sorry for any part of that. The last time I saw Greasy Beats was probably in a stuffy studio in Chilenje Market, Lusaka City. In the year 2008, Zambian hip-hop was going through one of its character-defining moments. It was trying to convince the rest of the country that this pack of snotty-nosed kids deserved a chance to be heard similar to the one you were giving their counterparts in America. With all due respect to the previous wave of evolutionary artists like Danny, JK and Chameleon, we needed something that we could relate to. We had just been given cable television, and Channel O and MTV Base were giving our impressionable young minds ideas that made our parents, and in this case a minister, call it immoral. Nowhere else was this new wave of corruption by the Western world as visible as Lusaka City. There is something about capital cities and deciding to be in the forefront of making decisions for their generation. I was from Ndola, a small city where the dream was to complete high school and relocate to Lusaka, because that is where anything that was going to happen from. So you can imagine how disgusted young me must have been watching something as innocent as hip-hop being bastardized in the mean streets of Lusaka. It is only in hindsight, however, that I look back and realize that the Lusaka interpretation of hip-hop was also a part of it the whole time. That is why I truly hate Lusaka City. I was going to find out eventually, but Lusaka would forever be the club I found out my girlfriend was a stripper at. I can go there for a meeting because money is money, but you wouldn't catch me dead looking for a good time at its doorstep. To its credit, however, Lusaka has really tried to make its strip club appealing. I would actually like to take this time out to thank each and every family member that sent our cousins over to our small cities for the holidays, or vice versa, because you made it very difficult for us to not want to be part of the whole thing. My new favorite comedian, Dave Chappelle, told a joke about how the Black Revolution in America was born during the Second World War. He theorizes that after black men went to the front lines, they experienced such equality with the soldier next to them that it was damn near impossible to sit at the back of the bus anymore. When your cousin came to visit, next time you were going to be just as cool as he was. Around 2007, a group of kids in Lusaka formed a rap group called 2-1, a name derived from their average age at the time. This group of artists tracked down a producer and decided to begin recording music on their own terms. They were tired of having to record around the schedules of pop artists. They were going to do their own thing. They decided to record a mixtape called Berg City on Lock, an album that was going to feature talent from Lusaka City. At the same time, I had just got my first song played on commercial radio station due to an insane stroke of luck. A girl I had been to school with had cashed in her chips, relocated to Lusaka, and was now the co-host of one of the most popular radio shows in the city. This girl is Nalukwi Mufungulwa, now a bubbly mother to a beautiful baby boy, but back then an equally bouncy morning radio presenter on QFM named Peaches. Her co-host was a legend named Mbachi Nkata, but for purposes of this part of my story, he shall go by the name Through-Matic. There was some strange pride in being from Ndola, and Through-Matic, being from the same town as me, must have connected with this narrative on a personal level. I tell myself this because there is no other logical explanation for him, the biggest presenter in the country at the time, paying attention to me, a wet-eared naive rapper. To cut the long story short, my first song debuted on the biggest show in the biggest city in Zambia, a push that even early on made me different from my rapping peers. They got played on shows that were strictly made for hip-hop, on small stations, in the dead of night. I beat Chameleon to get heavy rotation. Heavy rotation meant my song played every hour for a whole week. That was just the beginning of everything. Those were also the last times I looked at rap music as something pure and happy. So even though I was not a Lusaka native, I got the call to be on 2-1's mixtape. That was when I first met Greasy Beats. Part of a producer duo with another genius named A+, Greasy was handling most of the production on the mixtape. Unlike us small town boys, Lusaka kids had allowances and somehow managed to rent a studio in Chilenje Market. During the day they would be open for clients. At night they would record their mixtape. In those chilly evenings, some of the most important pages in Zambian hip-hop history were being written. It was in those sessions that I met names like Young Thug, now just Tim, J-Rocks, Dope G, Immaculate, Dagger, E-Chronic, 5-4, K-Star, Camstar, they would probably hate being bundled together again, and a host of other talented artists that began the new Zambian hip-hop movement. They would all come to the booth and Greasy or A+ would give them a canvas on which to paint their story for the tape. It was truly beautiful. There was an honorable amount of competition in the air at that time. Slap D was just blowing up and we believed we were next up. This is why we bundled together. Where we could afford to, we supported one another so that when the corporate world finally shone their light on us, we would seem organized and not just some kids that wanted to say swear words on television. There was a genuine honesty back then that has since disappeared into bank accounts. When you finished recording your song, everybody would stand and listen to it with you and make you feel like you were part of something great. Interestingly, deep down I didn't want to be just one of the faces. I can admit it now that we all turned out alright, but I never wanted to be bundled with anybody. I wanted to stand out, and I wanted to stand out alone. I always wanted to be the breakout English rapper after Crisis, someone that was considered the godfather of English rap. I always wanted to be here. How I feel about being here is a story for another day, however. Greasy produced a song called 72 Bars for me on which I took shots at TR, a rapper that was also from Ndola, but in a funny way felt more like a Lusaka representer. He was one of the few rappers in those days that were getting the attention of the ladies because of good looks and expensive or trendy clothes. Naturally, my meager past had a problem with him. I also attacked an artist called Rodney 9, a kid who had recently got his hands on a lot of money and was making a fool of himself in front of our very eyes. 72 Bars, though never responded to, gave me the edge I needed to turn heads in the local hip-hop circles. I had arrived. They were calling me the best rapper already. They were saying I was better than Crisis. Greasy had this tag that he used to throw on his productions. If I recall correctly, it was a sample from one of the Star Wars movies where a character said, "The boy is dangerous. They all sense it. Why can't you?" To this date, that tag is still the best production tag I have ever heard in my life. I may have not realized it then, but the tag was a clear representation of our state of mind. We were a ragtag group of rappers that were pretending to be our own managers, lawyers, stylists, and even promoters. Hell, K-Star was our graphics designer. We were a group of self-sufficient youth with the nerve to walk into corporate offices to request funding for an event. The funding never came. But at least we had the nerve to ask. I can't remember when Greasy left for England, but before I knew it he had left the country and had been reduced to sending us beats via email and clicking thumbs up emojis on Facebook. I have never seen Greasy since, and until recently had not even seen him on social media. Enter Tom Clancy's The Division. The Division is a game based on a post-flu virus New York. Your character is from a special, last resort unit that, for some reason that only makes sense in video game land, is built to deal with exactly this situation. The game was one of the first titles to be released on PlayStation 4 and was overlooked by video game enthusiasts in Lusaka. This is probably because it is a purely online game and Zambian internet has only recently become anything worth talking about. In the game's online world, people from all over the world kill each other's avatars to fulfill some strange infatuation with feeling good about defeating an opponent at everything but actual warfare. Having been denied video games at a young age, I dived into this world with both eyes open. I was shooting computer terrorists alongside kids that couldn't speak proper English from Pakistan in no time. There is a place on the internet where parents don't know their children are being raised behind their backs. This online world is one of them. I am not sure how I feel about this, seeing as I found this world in my adulthood when I have more control over my decisions. Under one of my Instagram shares of me playing The Division, Greasy returned to me. He returned at the time I needed him to show up, at a time when I had decided to return to rap music and I was very cautious about what moves I was making. This was going to be the second attempt at doing an album, but this time I was aware of what I had been doing wrong. After having been retired for a year and while on holiday in Samfya with my girlfriend, I finally broke down and gave in to my heart. For the few days I had been in Samfya, a campaign to send me to represent the country in a BET cypher had been doing the rounds on Twitter. This particular time caught my attention because people were going out of their way to show their support without my involvement. A radio presenter called Sanga Tembo was selflessly spearheading the campaign and it was growing exponentially. Next, t-shirts were being printed. I was feeling very good at the time. I shared a video of me waking up wearing shades and opening my door to the white sands of Samfya Beach. What better time to come back to rap? I was refreshed, I was wiser, and most importantly, the people that listened to my music were more vocal than they had ever been. I had a crowd. Throughout my life, I have always lived under the pressure of the anxiety that something bad will always happen just before my big break. Some people call this a curse, I guess. I can also understand how they would arrive at such an answer for my misfortune. I have been there too many times. If you watched the number of times I almost broke into the mainstream in my late 20s, you'd understand how I can even sympathize with such a theory. There were some strange coincidences on my way here. Sometimes, equipment would fail on the day we needed to make a performance CD. Other times, an ahead-of-its-time video that I had shot crashed on a PC and that was the end of that. What about the time I scored a chance to perform at the Born and Bred Awards, and as soon as I jumped on stage, some guy backstage stepped on cabling, got electrocuted, and took out the sound system? You have to admit, these coincidences can leave one very suspicious of anything that seems to be going his way. I had been alive to watch each and every rapper that I had come up with go on to achieve amazing things. Slap D was a megastar. Sheffy was now the go-to guy for hip-hop lyrics. I was just another failed English rapper that had ended up where they all do, doing a radio show. It was with this pinch of salt that I took in everything that was happening around me. That is why Samfya was important for me. On that beach, having a smoke with Benny and Dubs, I decided not only how I was going to return, but also why I was going to return. In my mind, it felt like 2007 all over again. When Greasy said he was going to send me new production for my album, however, I was apprehensive. When he was producing for us back then, he had been more of a hard producer. His music usually featured horns, trumpets, and all manner of brass sections. I had grown into a more sober, socially aware rapper, so I was worried I wasn't going to fit into his production. And true to that, the bulk of his beats didn't get me going when I first downloaded them. They seemed, for lack of a better word, not great enough. I needed great music, the kind of music that generations have revolutions to. Among them, however, was a sad piano piece that instantly became my friend. I had never got this side of Greasy back in the day. He had existed. I was just more focused on punching holes in people's egos. But here he was, the Greasy I had never got a chance to rap over. And what better canvas to paint a story of the journey of art than over a beat from one of the people that was there in the beginning. Greasy had seen me before the beard. He had seen me when I had acne, and an entire 3 years of my Facebook gallery was trash. So I decided to tell the story from the very beginning. I like to think of the beginning of art as the beginning of communication. Before those cave drawings were a means of communication, they served as a form of art. That is the art I try to say I am part of on the first song on my second album, No Returns, the intro. The title, No Returns, was the proof that sometimes a song writes itself. I had started out trying to tell a regretful story about my involvement in music, but somehow the song had turned out to be this grand account of the lifespan of an art form. While I was writing the song, I had become a fan of rappers that wrote an uneven number of verses. These were the artists that had a really short verse followed by a significantly longer one, like Jay-Z did on Kanye West's Never Let Me Down. It was with this frame of mind that I went into writing the opening verse of the song. I usually write while I'm walking, so my verses are jotted down in spurts. The opening verse of the song represents the spurt in which I carried the initial idea of the song. I was telling this version of a story that can only be told from a panoramic view. I go as intricate as talking about the curse of art being the fact that in a bid to get the world's attention you end up alienated. I once felt the alienation. After the dust settled over the new 2-1's Vitumbua, I had seen the bottom of the barrel as far as relevance went. I was working for a radio station, which further put me in a bad position, because I got to stand right next to my peers as they took giant strides in history. During this time, I spent quite some time at a place called The Spot at Olympia Market. The Spot was a tree at a car wash where degenerates gathered to further destroy their lives. I know that now, but then it provided a place where I could hide from the prying eyes of people looking for progress. At The Spot, I was just famous enough to be cool, but not so famous that people expect anything from me. This was the place my dreams of entertainment had chosen to commit suicide. The lowest point I can remember was spending a night in a guard room after not having enough money to get home. After that incident, I returned to Ndola to clear my head. That peace of mind was short-lived when I made close acquaintance with fellow dying star, Camstar. Around 2013, I was running around in clubs that didn't have tiled floors. That's the type of alienation I felt. So when we finally dropped my debut album, got a nomination for Best Hip Hop Album, and finally started getting good press due to a breakfast show on Rock FM, I was ready to quit while I was ahead. That was why I quit. I didn't want anything to ruin the story. It wasn't the greatest story ever, but I could live with it, especially because word on the street was I was a low-key local legend. I once went to Maki 2's studio and saw a folder full of my mixtapes, so to myself, as long as I had inspired the guys that made the change, my job was done. The first part and second part of the song were written a couple of weeks apart. By the time I wrote the second verse, I had fully decided what type of messaging I would put in my music. I had decided not to sugarcoat my growth. I dived directly into talking about my hopes of having a baby with my girlfriend, because that was the only thing I could truly say would love me for who I was. I have always been aware of what I put in my music. I am not sure whether this is because of or helped by the fact that the first studio I ever recorded at was professionally a gospel studio. In 2006, Bezario Mwanza had the most inspiring group of rappers under his label, and he wasted all of them. Another rapper, whose career went to die on radio, Steve, was a ready-to-blow hip-hop commodity after a few rare plays on Radio Phoenix Urban Central radio show. I had started to build a name after great radio presence in Lusaka. We also had an Italian Zambian rapper named Def Ends, who I am still convinced is the best rapper I've ever heard in my life. Those were the rappers that Bizarrio had under him. Even after calls to release their projects from radio and the streets alike, he focused on his then girlfriend's gospel album and video production. The exposure to a gospel environment, however, made me think about what I said in my lyrics. I once laughed at my favorite rapper Eminem poke fun at Will Smith for winning a Grammy without profanity, but for some reason I chose to use this time to choose what I said to the people that would listen to me. I never want to have to explain explicit lyrics to a child, to be very honest. More so, I never want to have to explain my explicit lyrics to my child. That's why I don't swear in my lyrics. This little, seemingly useless decision is what I believe is the difference between my rapping peers and I. Before bothering to be good, my music was always radio friendly. A radio presenter once told me about how they found it absolutely insulting that they had to clean international music already. So imagine how unbothered they would be about cleaning your song when you're someone they see every day. On the other hand, I find it pretty interesting that I managed to maintain an aura of toughness in my lyrics without being vulgar. Even Pompey, when he first showed up, said a few bad words here and there. I was a lyrical tyrant without even having to use obscene language. What is further interesting was that this only applied to the music. Anybody who has met me will tell you that I can sport a mouth that can make a sailor turn red, but for some reason refuse to be vulgar in a song. I end the verse calling myself a modern-day Martin Luther King standing on that infamous balcony, moments before he was silenced by the forces that don't want people with brilliant ideas that won't profit them. The same people that blew JFK's head all over his wife's top on national television as a warning to any other free thinkers. If it wasn't my death I was fascinated by, it was usually the death of someone else. I have always been baffled at how one moment a human being can be alive and the next second he is dead as a board. Early on in life, I realized that the arts are a shortcut to immortality. As though trapped in their creations, we are forced to resurrect dead artists every time we discuss their work. While I was making up my young mind on how I felt about death, I was also watching a cultural leader being shot on television. And that may have broken the thing inside of me that was made for the purpose of being afraid of dying for what one believes in. So when at the end of the second verse I equate myself representing a group of people that want to listen to English hip-hop in Zambia, I truly mean I'm ready to die to prove my point.
The Art.Is.Tic. It's an honor to be here, my brother. Turn me up in the headphones a little bit. You know, there's an old saying, all that is necessary for the triumph of evil is that good men do nothing. Well, we done doing nothing. About to stretch.
Made a light forever shine on everyone that glowed before me. We used to be just dope, now this whiskey soaked in glory. They made us Harley Quinns, we opened up for jokers. Stole this league from the shadows, now they kneel when they approach us. Even before you sit, these suckers who dethrone you, son.
Explore the world of psychological thriller within you. From the makers of the Pan-African Party comes a gripping, chilling journey. Coming soon to the Avocado Media Network. Subscribe on YouTube,